So today I'm going to be reviewing a book called Things a Bright Girl Can Do. So I got this last month for my book box club, and the theme was Fearless Females. So the book that we got was Things a Bright Girl Can Do by Sally Nicholls, and this is based in the suffragette time, and I really like this book. I didn't realise that I didn't know as much as I thought I did about British history and what happened in that time. I mean, most of you do kind of know because your grandparents or their parents were in that generation. I mean, my nan was born in 1926, so she can tell me what happened in the Second World War, and then her father was in the suffragette time and he was in the wars. So you do really actually have that history in you. You don't realise, but actually you're a part of that history whether you know it or not. So this book based around 3 characters who are in the suffragettes decade. So this book is about the suffragettes. 1914, the world stands on the edge of change, but women still have no vote. Evelyn is 17, and though she is rich and clever, she may never be allowed to follow her older brother to university. Life is set out for her, dances, tea parties and marriage, but Evelyn wants freedom and choice, even if it means paying the highest price alongside her fellow suffragettes. And then there's May, who campaigns tirelessly for women's votes and fair pay with the anti-violence suffragists. When she meets Nell, a girl who's grown up in hardship, she sees a kindred spirit. Together and in love, the 2 girls start to dream of a world where all kinds of women can find their place. But the fight for freedom will change Evelyn, May and Nell more than they could ever imagine. As the Great War looms, just how much are they willing to sacrifice? Well, that book is so good. And this is the back cover, Votes for Women. And the front cover is awesome as well. And in the book box club we got badges, and I have one here, and this is not the exact badge, but this badge is what the women would wear, and they would give these badges out for Votes for Women, and these were the colours purple, green and white, and they would wear them and they would promote Votes for Women. So as the description says, the book is based about 3 girls. So one chapter will be about Evelyn, one will be about May and one will be about Nell, and they do meet. They all have different stories, but the main story is that they want women to vote. So this book bases around the whole of the 1914s, when the suffragettes were out there trying to fight for the rights for women. And I think it was 1918 when they finally got the vote, but it took a lot of campaigning, a lot of standing in the street getting food thrown at you, a lot of speeches, a lot of talks to actually get the first bill through Parliament, and these women were amazing for what they did. And Amelia Pankhurst was one of the most famous suffragettes that I know, and she unfortunately died, I think it was a month or so before the suffragettes actually won and the first female MP was elected and the vote got for women. And it's been a journey since before 1914 to get women a vote, and I think the only place that doesn't allow women's votes now is this place in Italy, and in this community only males are allowed to vote for the new Pope. But in Saudi Arabia, women now have the vote, and they're allowed to drive now, I think. And I mean, I might not be 100% on these facts, but this is just what I've read. But yeah, finally women have the vote. I think it's in the back of the book actually, it explains. So, yes, Saudi Arabia in 2015, women were given the vote, and the only place is the place that I said in Italy, called the Vatican City, where the new Pope is elected by cardinals, all of whom are men. So that is great that every country now women are allowed to vote. So the book based on Evelyn to start with. Now Evelyn is very different because she hasn't been brought up in hardship. She's got this nice house, she lives with her parents, I think she's got 2 brothers and a sister, and she's got this boy who she's been best friends with, and they are technically betrothed, and his name is Teddy, and they're very, very close. But because Evelyn wants more, she doesn't see Teddy as a future husband. In the back of her mind she does, and she does love Teddy and she does want to be with him, but there's a lot more that she wants to do, and Teddy is completely on her side, which is rare because a lot of men back then, they were a man's man. I mean, my grandma's dad, he was a man's man, and also my mum's granddad, he was a man's man. And I don't know what their views were because they're not here for me to ask, but they were very, this is what a man does. And although women did speak up and they did say stuff, they were still a man, and men do not cry, as they say. So Evelyn is jealous of her brother in a way. She does want to go to university. I mean, she's a very clever girl, and that is her fight. She wants women to be equal, and although she wants this vote, she wants women to be equal. So she's not as, you know, straightforward as May is at the beginning, because May wants the vote. She's not afraid to say she wants the vote, whereas Evelyn, although she says, you know, she wants it and she expresses her views around Teddy, she doesn't start off as one of those girls that is out there on the street campaigning. And then there's May, and May lives with her mum, and her father died when May was younger, and her father was a headmistress. He was the headmaster at a school, and he was a very lovely man because he created a school for those that were less fortunate children, and he was their headmaster and he taught them. And there's Nell, who is conflicted because she dresses like a guy, she wears her brother's clothes, and her mum takes no notice of it. Her mum doesn't care, but she's not sure what she feels. Whereas May is very, I like girls, but Evelyn's not too sure. So when they meet, it's very awkward for Nell because she does like May, but she's not sure what exactly she's feeling. Now all 3 of these girls campaign and get with the suffragettes and become a part of it to try and get the vote for women. So Evelyn at the beginning lives in her own world, you know, she wants to go to university, and then she starts to hear about suffragette meetings and she starts to attend them, and then she becomes one of those sandwich girls where they have the sandwich plaque and the back and the front where it says votes for women suffragette meeting, and she helps promote them like that. And there are 2 different types of suffragettes, a bit like those that fight for animal rights, like Peter. And there are the suffragettes that stand there and campaign and give out flyers and do shouts and a few marches, and then the ones that throw bombs and blow up things and make their stand by creating terror. And they want to cause such a big sort of drama so the government start to feel tired and start to feel stressed out, and that's how they want to beat the government, by getting their vote, by, you know, campaigning endlessly to get their vote. And Nell is one of the girls that will go out in the marches. She'll go out, she's a bit of a tough nut, she, you know, she's Madame Fist Spinelli style, she wears the cap and she's out there, and May's a little bit less than that, so they're not very much alike, but they both want women to have a vote. Now Evelyn's father won't allow her to go to university, and her mother's one of those ladies that sit at home and have lunch and have tea and have little parties, so she doesn't want that life. She knows there's more out there. And, you know, May's the same along with Nell, but Nell's quite happy just to get a job anywhere. So as they're campaigning tirelessly, things start to change in the world. Germany are starting to get closer to Britain, and Britain are getting closer to fight back because they are invading Belgium, and Belgium is an ally of Britain, and Britain want to help Belgium. So as Germany are getting closer and Britain are starting to fight back, men have to join the army, and a lot of men want to, because they want to fight for king and country. They're proud to be British and they want to fight for their country and their people. And then there are a few other men that are a little bit like, I want it, but I'm not going to fight myself. And then there's the women who are like, you know, they don't want their men to go off, which is fair enough. And then there are the women that do think they're a coward if you don't go. And a lot of people are excited for this war. I mean, that's a weird thing to say, that people are excited. But back then, I suppose, they kind of needed something to be excited about. And that was this war. I mean, the suffragettes started to step back a little bit. They didn't want to put too much pressure on the government, because at the end of the day, man or woman, you need to stick by your country and you need to work together. And they didn't want to cause more stress to the government. So they all decided to take a step back. They were still campaigning, they were still, you know, giving out flyers and leaflets and stuff. But it was more of a case of, let's take a step back in what we do. Let's continue to do our work. But let's not tire the government out as much, because there is a lot more to do. There is a bigger threat at the moment, and that was Germany. So May's father obviously died, so he doesn't go to the war, so she doesn't get affected by it as such. Part of her is affected because of the whole campaign and the suffragette part, but she, I've forgotten the term now, but she is, I think, is it a pacifist? She does not want to fight. She's about love and peace, not a hippie, but she doesn't want fighting and she doesn't agree with it. So anyone that sort of says to her it's a good thing, she sort of looks at them like, excuse me, it's not a good thing. And it isn't a good thing. Okay, war is not a good thing. But a lot of people had their different views, and she, you know, wasn't afraid to say what hers was, and they weren't afraid to say what theirs was. And then there's Nell. And it affects her a lot more than it affects May, because her brother has just joined up for the war. Her father has just gone back to the war, and because of that, her mum now has to start to earn more, because basically when a man would go off to war, he would get paid and he would send some of the money back to his family and they would be fine. Because before that, her father wasn't working as much. He was working, but they were less. So they would go off and send some money back and keep some money for themselves. So that would be fine. And then when her brother joined the war, there was more income coming in, because they would get paid a lot more than if you were a milkman, okay? So, and then obviously they would get like the pension, they would get a decent amount of money for joining up, or signing up. But then when her father comes back, because of something happened out there, her mum then has to work more to pay because he's not working anymore. And then her other brother wants to join, so she's got all these brothers and her father that are joining the army, and she, she's up for it, she's happy, they're doing it, she understands why they're doing it, but it affects her more than it affects May. And then there's Evelyn, whose brother is joining up, and then there's Teddy, whose brothers are joining up as well. And then eventually Teddy joins up for the army, and Evelyn's obviously conflicted, she's upset, she doesn't want him to go, and it's at that point that she realises that, spoiler, she loves him. So that's really lovely, and she realises that. But back then, I mean, it was hard for these people. It was hard for them to go out and to fight people that they didn't know why they were fighting. They were just following their rules. And in here it features the Battle of the Somme, and it was the bloodiest battle in British history, and my great-grandfather was in the Battle of the Somme and he survived. And wow, when you think about how many people died and the fact that there was this thing called no man's land, and I think once they played football across no man's land, and I think it was one of those things where they pause it when they've had too many deaths, and they take a day or so to pause the war. I've forgotten what the word is, but they do it in a lot of battles. I should find out what the word is really. So it was called a Christmas truce. Became one of the most famous events of World War. But what's the true story behind it? So late on Christmas Eve 1914, men of the British Expedition Force heard German troops in the trenches opposite them singing carols and songs, and saw lanterns and small fir trees along their trenches. The following day, British and German soldiers met in no man's land and exchanged gifts, took photographs, and some played impromptu games of football. They also buried casualties and repaired trenches and dugouts. After Boxing Day meeting, no man's land dwindled out. And I don't know if you can see it properly, but there's a photo of the truce. So that's going on in the book, and I mean, then every battle and every war that they did was terrible, and obviously that happens all the time. In every extract of history there was obviously something bad and you were fearing for people's lives. But it's only now, after 100 years, that, you know, when it's not promoted, but when it's on the news, and you hear about the Battle of Somme, you think, oh, it's 100 years, because it was last year, wasn't it? 100 years of the Battle of Somme. And you think, oh my God, that was such a bad battle. It was so scary and terrifying that I would have hated to have had a loved one out there. And although my great-grandfather was out there, my grandma wasn't born, so she didn't have him, you know, she wasn't sat there worrying about him, but his family would have been worrying about him. You know, some people didn't even come back alive, and some people went missing, and you assume that they were dead, but they could have been out there still, not knowing how to get home. You know, and both sides, you know, the British and the German, and every single, you know, army, it was scary for them. And, you know, it's all because the two leaders and, you know, whatnot. So this is going on in the book. There's other stuff going on, like rationing and the fact that they don't have a lot of money for things. A lot of the men have gone off to war, which means that a lot of the jobs are left, but women are not getting paid a fair wage. A lot of women are starting to take over the men's jobs because they need to be done and they need to have money, because their men have either died in war or they're in war and they have too many children to look after. You know, rents and stuff are going up because people don't have money to, you know, do this, and then people are getting evicted. You know, a lot of stuff is going on in this book, and, you know, it's based on true events, like marches down Buckingham Palace and stuff like this, and the king, you know, all of this is true. Although the characters aren't necessarily true, are not necessarily real, this is happening in every single person's lives. Something like this is going on. So you've got women that are driving the buses now because the men aren't there, but then when the men come back, they're going to want their jobs back. You know, and women aren't getting paid the same amount. Say men are getting £10 an hour, women are probably only getting about £5 an hour. You know, and they're making more money because the women are, you know, charging less or whatever. But it's not fair, and that is why the suffragettes are not just fighting for the vote, they're fighting for equal pay. So this book is really good, and it gave me a lot of insight to history and what it was like for these girls, and also what it was like for the men, but mainly the women, because it's about votes for women. And although I've done a lot of research on my family history, I think I've gone up to the 1700s, I've done pretty well. It really did help you to visualise what was going on. You can look at photos, you can look at internet, you know, you can look at the internet, you can have a look, you can ask people about it, but when you read it and you can imagine what it was like in your own way, it's amazing. And Sally Nicholls did an amazing job at writing this book, and how she blended the characters together and how they met and their lives. It was fantastic, and it did make you wonder what it would have been like for your ancestors to have lived in the 1940s and what it was like for them with their votes. And it makes you wonder, would your grandmothers have wanted a vote, or were they quite happy, you know, not having a vote, having a voice? So I really, really enjoyed this book. I couldn't put it down the moment I started reading it, and again, it's not something that I normally read, and I am so glad that I got it in my book box, because I don't think I would have bought it because I wouldn't have known how great this book is. And it is fantastic, it's amazing. And if you like history, read it. If you like votes for women, read it. It's really good. And if you don't like any of that kind of stuff, it's still worth a read, because it was written amazing. It was written wonderfully. It was written wonderfully, and it was a joy to read. So I hope you liked my book review on things a bright girl can do. And believe me, you can do bright things if you believe in yourself, because every single one of these women in this book believed in themselves and believed in what their cause was, and they achieved their goal. Because look, I'm a woman and I get to vote. and that is why I will always vote at every single election, whether it be local, whether it be worldwide. I will vote because I have been given the chance to vote, because the women in the Suffragettes did that for me, for every other woman, and I think that you should read this book. So yes, this book is out there and it costs £12.99 and it is an amazing cover and amazing back, and I really, really liked it. I don't know if you can get it cheaper on Amazon. You probably can get it on the Kindle for a cheaper, but sometimes it's nice to actually have the book in your hand. And although I love my Kindle and I know I love it, and I know I love reading books, it was nice to hold this one in my hand because you don't get this on the Kindle. And when you sit on the bus and you're like, yeah, votes for women, it's a great book to have in your hand. So yes, try it please, 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 and let me know what you think below. So the question I'm going to ask you today is, do you know if you had a suffragette in your family? If you did, tell me their story below and we'll have a chat about it, because I don't know if I've got any suffragettes in my family, but I like to believe that I did, okay? Because I would assume that most families would have one secret suffragette that doesn't like to tell anybody, because I think I would be a suffragette if I was back then, and I'm glad that I got to read this book and experience what it was like to be a suffragette. It wasn't all squeaky clean and amazing, but yeah, it was pretty great to have something that you believe in and to achieve your goal, because that's nice to have a goal and to achieve it. So yeah, let me know if you want me to do a video about my family history and what I found out and how I found out. Do like a review on Ancestry, but I'll only do that if you want me to. So yes, I will see you next week for my next book review. Bye!